Welcome to this important conversation about managing money under the intense pressure of a critical illness. Today we will explore a central dilemma. Should you use savings to pay off debt, or should you preserve liquidity for medical costs and living expenses? We will cover conventional wisdom, a controversial but practical perspective on stopping repeated bailouts, how to prioritize medical security, smart asset allocation and legacy planning, and ways to maximize remaining time with meaning. Along the way, we will translate principles into concrete steps, diagrams, and examples so you can act with clarity under stress. First, I will lay out the agenda so you know what to expect. We start with the dilemma, then move to a controversial but useful perspective about not repeatedly bailing out poor spending habits. Next, we will prioritize medical security, then examine asset allocation, especially the home. After that, we will discuss quality of life and legacy choices. Then we will move into an actionable step-by-step plan. Visualize it with diagrams, compare strategies side by side, and summarize with a quick table. Finally, we cover estate planning essentials and include 2 short quizzes to help reinforce key concepts. Before we proceed, it is important to note that this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, medical, or financial advice. Because regulations and options vary widely by jurisdiction and personal situation, you should consult a licensed financial planner, an attorney specializing in estate planning, and, where relevant, a qualified patient advocate or social worker to tailor these concepts to your circumstances. Now let's define the core dilemma clearly. On one hand, you can use your available cash to eliminate debt. On the other hand, you can preserve cash as a flexible buffer for medical costs and living expenses. Conventional wisdom favors liquidity because it allows more flexibility under uncertainty. Medical costs can be unpredictable, urgent, and larger than expected, especially early in treatment. Because emotions run high, applying a structured framework helps reduce regret and decision fatigue. Next, consider a controversial but important point. If a partner has a history of poor money management, paying off unsecured debt does not fix the underlying behavior. Repeated bailouts can enable the same cycle to continue. For example, eliminating $8,000 of credit card debt may feel responsible, but if spending patterns remain unchanged, the debt can reappear. Before committing substantial assets, require a concrete behavior change plan with a budget, spending limits, and accountability measures. This protects your household and preserves options for care. Moving on, prioritize medical security above all. Maintain a cash buffer, $10,000 or more if feasible, and keep accessible assets such as vehicle equity. Continue making at least minimum payments on high-interest accounts to avoid penalties and credit damage, but resist the urge to drain your emergency fund just to accelerate debt payoff. The primary obligation is to ensure care, medication, transportation, and essential living costs are covered. Furthermore, think strategically about assets. If liquidation is necessary, consider downsizing a high-value item, such as selling a $27,000 vehicle to move to a single-car household. This raises cash without fully draining savings. At the same time, secure housing stability. Reducing a $140,000 mortgage builds lasting security for a surviving partner. However, do not reduce cash to zero. Maintain operational liquidity to handle medical invoices, transportation, and living costs. Balance long-term shelter stability with near-term care requirements. Now let's visualize the trade-offs with a mind map. At the center is critical illness finance, branching into 2 strategies: preserve liquidity and pay off debt. Under preserve liquidity, we include maintaining an emergency fund of $10,000 or more, covering treatment costs and living expenses, using negotiation or hardship programs with creditors, keeping asset flexibility such as vehicle equity, and allocating a modest portion to meaningful experiences. Under payoff debt, we include interest savings and the emotional relief of a zero balance. But we also note significant risks: losing the cash buffer, behavior risk if spending patterns are unchanged, and reduced flexibility to manage the mortgage or emergency needs. The map highlights that medical unpredictability tends to favor liquidity. In contrast, let's compare the options. Debt payoff reduces interest and can provide emotional relief, but it can eliminate your cash buffer and leave you vulnerable to new expenses or repeat debt if behavior does not change. Liquidity, by comparison, preserves flexible cash for treatment and living costs, allows for negotiations with creditors or use of hardship programs, and supports mortgage stability as well as the ability to respond to crises. The trade-off is that interest continues on unsecured debt, but overall resilience is usually stronger with liquidity in medically uncertain situations. Then let's turn this into a practical plan. First, triage essentials: housing, utilities, food, transportation, and medications. Second, build or preserve a cash buffer of $10,000 or more if possible. Third, continue minimum payments on unsecured debt to avoid fees and credit damage. Fourth, contact creditors to request hardship plans, lower interest rates, or temporary forbearance. Fifth, consider downsizing assets, such as selling a second car, to raise liquidity. Sixth, if you have excess funds after preserving liquidity, direct them toward mortgage principal for long-term housing stability. Seventh, secure estate planning documents, including a will, financial power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and updated beneficiary designations. Eighth, establish clear spending boundaries when a partner has a history of overspending by using budgets, spending alerts, and accountability. Ninth, document everything and prepare a simple, accessible binder or digital folder for a trusted person. Next, here is a quick budget snapshot arranged by priority. First are essentials such as housing, food, medications, and transportation. Second is liquidity, maintaining an emergency fund of $10,000 or more and keeping cash accessible. Third are care operations including copays, home care, and equipment. Fourth involves negotiations with creditors for hardship plans or lower rates. Fifth is asset moves like selling an extra vehicle without resorting to distressed pricing. Sixth is the mortgage principal, which comes after liquidity is secured. Seventh is memories and experiences, which should be meaningful but budget capped. After that, secure the legal framework. Update your will and, if useful, include a letter of intent to guide loved ones. Set up a financial power of attorney and a healthcare proxy so trusted individuals can act if you cannot. Verify beneficiary designations on retirement accounts and life insurance, and consider transfer on death or payable on death registrations where appropriate. Finally, align account titling with your plan to avoid unintended probate complexities. Now a quick knowledge check. The question is, you have $12,000 in cash, $8,000 in high-interest credit card debt, and unpredictable treatment costs ahead. What is the best first move? Option A is to use $8,000 to pay off the card now. Option B is to keep at least $10,000 in cash, make minimum payments, and call the card issuer for a hardship plan. Option C is to split the difference, paying $4,000 now and keeping $8,000 in cash. Option D is to cash out retirement to pay all debts immediately. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is Option B. Preserve at least $10,000 of liquidity to navigate unpredictable treatment costs. Continue making minimum payments to avoid fees and credit damage. And proactively call the issuer to request a hardship program that may reduce interest or provide temporary relief. Paying the card off immediately would eliminate your buffer and leave you vulnerable to new expenses. Meanwhile, consider how to maximize remaining time. Allocate a modest and intentional budget for shared experiences. Favor low-cost but high-meaning activities such as local trips, family gatherings, or dedicated time together. Document the memories with photos, voice notes, and letters. Remember that the most valuable legacy can be time well shared and clarity for loved ones, not only debt reduction. Next, let's examine the process from crisis to stability. The flowchart begins with triaging essentials, then preserving a cash buffer of $10,000 or more. It directs you to contact creditors for hardship options and consider downsizing assets, such as a second car, to raise liquidity. Decision points: check whether the buffer is adequate and whether a behavior change plan is in place. If not, avoid accelerating debt payoff. If there is surplus after liquidity is secure, apply it to mortgage principal. Throughout, continue minimum payments and track medical costs. With estate planning completed, the path leads toward greater stability. Now for a second knowledge check. The scenario is that you can either prepay $5,000 on a $140,000 mortgage or replace a $27,000 vehicle with a cheaper car to raise $10,000 in cash. Your emergency fund is only $3,000 and treatment costs are rising. Which choice is better right now? Option A is mortgage prepayment. Option B is replacing the vehicle to raise $10,000 for the emergency fund. Option C is splitting between mortgage and cash. Option D is doing nothing until bills arrive. You may pause the video now to consider. We will review the answer in the next section. The correct answer is option B. In periods of acute medical uncertainty, building liquidity is the stronger move. Replacing the vehicle to raise approximately $10,000 bolsters the emergency fund and improves resilience for care and living costs. Once stability improves and cash reserves are adequate, any surplus can be directed toward mortgage prepayments. To recap the essentials: prioritize liquidity during medical crises, avoid enabling repeat debt without evidence of behavior change, and secure housing stability. Downsize assets when needed before draining savings. Use hardship programs and negotiate interest rates. Protect time and memories with a modest, intentional budget. And complete your estate planning with aligned beneficiaries. In summary, preserve a strong cash buffer to handle unpredictable medical and living costs. Continue minimum payments and proactively seek hardship relief from creditors. Consider downsizing assets before tapping savings. If you have surplus funds once liquidity is secure, direct them to mortgage principal rather than unsecured debt. Finally, invest in meaningful time with loved ones while completing essential estate planning. Finally, thank you for spending this time with me. If this helped you or someone you love, please like the video, share it with a friend who needs clarity, and subscribe for more evidence-based, empathetic guidance. I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Your story could be the guidepost that helps another family make a confident, compassionate choice.